Police.
Yeah, there's somebody after me.
I'm sorry?
There's somebody after me.
Where are you?
There's somebody after me.
11 bodies were found on a desolate stretch of Gilgo Beach, New York in 2010 and 2011. 9 women, a man, and a toddler.
Investigators surround Rex Heuermann's Massapequa Park home and continue to confiscate evidence, both here and at 2 storage rental units nearby.
Cortese is here now with more on how a discarded pizza crust helped the detectives tie all of this evidence together.
Rex Heuermann is a demon that walks among us. A predator.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Occult Rejects. This is going to be a real quick, short one. Something that happened to hit the news. I don't know if it was last night or this morning, but I did not see it until this morning. It was something about, the DNA, again, with Rex Heuermann and the Gilgo Beach murders. And I had already thought, stuff with the DNA was kind of fishy already. And so I thought it was worth, bringing this up. And it even kind of reminds me a little bit of the Idaho 4 situation with the DNA. It's just very weird and funny stuff, I think, with DNA lately with crimes. One thing I did want to mention real quick as well. I know in the last episode, again, sometimes I don't even notice stuff until I'm watching it. Or make connections until I, rewatch something or see something. Yeah, and again, like Lazarus is even saying DNA, do not ask, in the chat right now. But, I was talking about stuff earlier, and there's a few things I wanted to actually kind of just cover. I guess something I also want to, make a public statement about. I do know that sometimes when messing with numbers, a lot of it can be silly, and some of it is just like, where are you even getting that from? But numbers do match in gematria. I'm going to repeat myself again. Sigils, planetary squares, all of that stuff. It does go back to numerical value due to gematria or the Pythagorean stuff. There is number value. There is also meanings. And, when it comes to Hebrew, you have numerical value, you have a symbolic meaning, and you even have another meaning. Just like this up here on the full card, it equals Aleph, and it can also mean ox, and it could be pineal energy. There is a lot of stuff due to Hebrew in gematria. Now, if you're not a magician or an occultist, and you do not study tarot, you have not studied occultism, and you do not study this stuff, in my opinion, this is going to sound fucked up, you have zero fucking right saying anything about this shit. Because you are naive and ignorant to it. And I'm not saying that in a nasty way when I say naive or ignorant. You don't understand, your brain can't make sense of it, so you fucking lie to yourself and say it makes 0 sense because your ego can't handle not knowing. That is a good reason and a probable reason why people shit on this stuff when they don't even practice this stuff. A good example I would like to make. I'm not in the health field, but if I decided to walk into a hospital and tell a nurse how to do their job when I've never done this stuff, I would be an asshole for that. Because I don't know anything about nursing or the medical field. I would be doing a disservice and a harm doing that. Because I am ignorant and naive to being a nurse. So I don't make claims and tell people how to do things I don't understand. If you don't understand this stuff, sit down, pay attention, and learn something instead of saying silly shit. You don't know crap, shut up. Straight like that. I'm sorry. But you have a lot of people out there recently in this community that are trying to help people, and when they don't understand something, they write it off as false and fucked up. You're schizophrenic, there might be something wrong with you. That's how they write it off. You are doing a huge disservice if you don't understand this shit by saying that. Shut the fuck up, for real. Because you're just making things worse. You're keeping people ignorant to real shit. Now, getting into it. When I had mentioned something before about the hand of God with Asa, that is because the hand of God actually matches tarot. And it actually matches Hebrew. So does open hand and closed hand. I'm showing you right here, number 10, the Wheel of Fortune. That is letter Kaf, which means open hand. So when someone has their open hand with a key in it that's been constantly mentioned throughout this whole case, key, and a red bracelet that looks like a Kabbalah bracelet, and then a checkered keychain, yes, I might say that is something like this because it matches everything. Now, if you don't know this stuff, you can't say it's silly because you're naive and ignorant to this shit. Number 9, Hermit. Yod, closed hand. Deeds, work. Open hand, closed hand. Now, I have joked a lot about the Wheel of Fortune looking like a pizza pie. And I do think the pizza is used a lot, besides what other people like to think, about other stuff, and they just want to jump to everything's always got to deal with kids. Pizza pie, in my opinion, is also the Wheel of Fortune in symbolism. Rex got busted due to pizza crust. So when I want to make, theories about this stuff, I don't see how far off I am, considering the Wheel of Fortune can be drawn looking like a pizza and an open hand goes with that card, with a red Kabbalah string and a checkered key tag and a key in her hand. That's how I get this stuff. So I know I had mentioned earlier in the episode that we did earlier that we did the premiere on, I didn't even really catch myself that the open hand does go with the Wheel of Fortune that looks like pizza, like Rex got busted. I didn't realize that until I was in the chat watching the premiere. So I just did want to cover that real quick. That's where I'm getting this stuff from. And if people don't understand it, well, that's because you're naive and ignorant to it. So sit back, bump your head, light up a cigarette or a joint, and learn something instead of stroking your ego and shitting on others. Straight up. Now, we're going to get into, finally, the DNA of almost 7 minutes in. We're going to get to this whole DNA thing, because I really do think this DNA thing is a little weird, in my opinion. And I'm going to try to pull up the news, too. So, yes. And Lisa, why don't you just, if you can, while I'm trying to do all this, maybe you can mention something about like the whole thing with, this DNA and everything.
So basically in the news here recently, they've talked about how Rex is being ordered to submit a buccal DNA sample, and buccal is cheek swab for lay terms. And so the prosecution is asking Rex Heuermann and his attorney, obviously, for a DNA sample. And of course, the attorney or the defense attorney is saying, absolutely not. Y'all basically claimed that the whole reason you arrested him is it hinges on the fact that you were able to match a hair sample or hair that was collected off of one of the bodies to a pizza crust DNA sample, right? Because they had him under surveillance and they were tracking him. And apparently they found, it was in the news and everything, a picture of the pizza box, a picture of the pizza crust, that is where they got the actual DNA sample, and that it matched the hair sample that was collected off of one of the bodies. So, that's pretty much the narrative that's been going around for the past few weeks. And then you have this news blip where it says, judge orders Rex Heuermann to submit a buccal DNA sample. And it's like, wait a minute, I thought you already had a DNA sample. Why are you asking him to submit another one? And so, the Heuermann's attorney naturally is going to oppose this order, arguing that you're failing to show probable cause connecting his DNA sample taken from the pizza box, supposedly, to the actual hair sample that was collected off of one of the bodies. But according to the judge that's presiding over this case, he's stating that there is enough probable cause based on the court documents that he did commit it, that he that he committed the crimes that he's being accused of. So now he's being given up until August 15th to submit a buccal sample, right? And these were direct quotes that I took off of News Nation Cuomo, because I think it's important to point this out, is that the law is, in the state of New York, you need a conviction in order to submit a DNA sample into one of these state nationwide databases, right? Every state is different. If there is probable cause, they collect a DNA sample and then they put it into a database and then they see if it links up to anything else. In the state of New York, according to the internet, is that you need an actual conviction. You're like, okay, well, if there isn't a conviction because he hasn't gone to trial yet, why are you going to submit his DNA sample into the database? And the judge is saying, well, you can argue it and maybe do so, and if the judge rules you can, then you can, right? Obviously, the court proceedings and so forth. But the actual quotes that were said was that if they get DNA from his saliva, it's going to be a larger profile and a better link. So to me, listening to that, knowing what I know, it's like, so then you don't have enough evidence from the pizza crust to link him to the hair sample. And the reason that they go on to say is that if you get a swab, cheek swab, you can run it through the standard STR profile. STR stands for short tandem repeats. That's basically nuclear DNA sampling that will further identify the individual. Now, remember in episode 1, we talked about mitochondrial DNA and how mitochondrial DNA is passed down maternally. You get mitochondrial DNA from your mom. So every one of your siblings, including your mom, have identical mitochondrial DNA. So you cannot identify an individual from mitochondrial DNA. You can only do that via nuclear DNA. So with hair, if you are only analyzing the hair shaft and not the hair follicle, excuse me, the hair shaft only contains mitochondrial DNA. The hair follicle contains nuclear DNA. And if you don't have nuclear, then you don't have an identification for an individual. So if they're linking, I know I'm repeating myself, but it's kind of important. If you do not have nuclear DNA, you don't have an individual. If you only have mitochondrial DNA, that is not enough. Even so much that mitochondrial DNA is not even admissible in court, and mitochondrial DNA is not even admissible to be entered into the statewide or nationwide databases, which is what we said on the first episode. I don't think a lot of people even talked about that or covered that early on the way we did. But I mean, it's one of those things, and now everybody's catching up, which is great. But so the STR short tandem repeats profile is what is used as the gold standard in forensic DNA. And that is obtained from nuclear DNA, which you can get from a cheek swab. So again, going back, so they didn't have enough to convict him, right?
Like, I thought the pizza box was why they were able to arrest the guy.
Exactly.
Which now all of this makes no sense. It's like, I thought you arrested him due to his DNA, but now you're asking him for his DNA?
Yeah, I mean, and you go into these multiple news articles, and they're talking about how the DNA was used to compare from the hair to that was found in one of the victims, but they're talking about mitochondrial DNA, and now you're talking about the actual saliva on the pizza crust. Apparently, it wasn't enough. But if you read the articles and you listen to the news video and you listen very carefully, you start to hear the shift in the narrative. In that the commentary such as, well, DNA was never the linchpin in this case. It was more the digital evidence. And I'm like, no, y'all were pretty set on the whole DNA thing. Like, y'all kept talking about the pizza crust. I saw that picture over and over. But with key phrases as, well, digital footprint is what is going to hinge this case on. And when they say footprint, all of a sudden, like, the listener's like, oh, well, individual, footprint means something individualistic. And again, like with the Coburger case, the cellular data at best is in an area. It does not identify an individual, in my opinion. But so, yeah. And I think you can go back a few years and you had that whole DNA adage where it's like, if you don't have DNA, you don't have a case. Well, now they're saying, well, that's not necessarily the case because, DNA can be always attacked in court and, it's not 100%. You're right. It's not 100%, but especially if you don't have nuclear DNA. So that was just something I wanted to kind of point out.
Yeah, I just thought it was like really interesting. I mean, I mean, for me, I guess people like myself, I would think if you saw this article, you'd be like, wait, what? Maybe regular, normal people wouldn't even think anything of it, but it was like, wait, you've already said that, like, the DNA, like, my opinion, and I think I don't want to misquote John Ray, but I even think he said that the phone stuff would not even be enough to stick this onto him. So now you have this phone stuff that really, some basic stuff, I guess. And then the DNA that you supposedly got from a pizza box, but now that's not good enough either. Like the DNA seemed to be the big thing about why they made the arrest.
That's
I mean, even in
how I read it.
Even in the intro that I used, I clipped from a news thing. How pizza crust led them to this guy.
Exactly.
The pizza box with his DNA now isn't good enough. This shit is shady.
Yeah. I mean, the fact that they're asking for it now that he's been arrested, I think they needed to arrest him in order to get the sample. That's what I think.
I mean, listen, I'm going to go along with what Lazarus just said. DNA from a trash can isn't good enough for anything unless you're Oscar the Grouch. I mean,
that's awesome. I love it.
I mean, for real.
That's awesome.
For real. I had even said that too, not to sound silly, but I mean, you're throwing something in there with a whole bunch of other trash. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
This
when you think about DNA, all Homo sapiens, human beings, we have 99% identical DNA. That's what makes us Homo sapiens. So only 0.1% or 1% distinguishes us. Now you're looking for an individual within that 1%. I mean, you got to narrow it down. And like Lazarus said, I mean, you're contaminating your DNA sample, especially with putting it in the trash.
Yeah, that's what I think about this whole case. A bunch of trash. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's really. Is there anything else you'd really want to say about this? Again, like we said, this was just going to be a quick one. For people who may not be catching on, I think this is very weird because you've already got the guy from DNA and now you're asking for it. And there's just a lot of other things with this case that I do think could be possibly maybe pointing to other people. So I just find this very, very weird.
Right.
Very, and even with Kohlberger too. I mean, that whole case is untouched DNA on a button on a knife sheath. But yet they didn't have his, I don't know.
Yeah.
If people don't know the whole Kohlberger thing in the Idaho 4, go look into that whole DNA situation. They tried searching for it, couldn't find it. So, I mean, how did you even know what to test it? I don't know. And
right. I mean, if this is the evidence they're using, how easy is it to frame someone? I mean, you can even go down that road if you wanted to. But, and we mentioned it in the video that premiered this morning in that there was another suspect in this Gilgo 4 that lived a few blocks down from Rex that they had pinged his cell phone data with, and that his initials, which I yet to find, that his full name that I've yet to find, that his initials were the same initials on the belt that was found to tie up one of the girls. I think that's also something worth mentioning. So, but that's all I had.
All right. Well, thank you, Lisa. I know this was mostly all you because I know you were the one with the DNA and all that stuff, the technical stuff. So I appreciate you jumping back on and covering this real quick. But, yeah, I just think this whole DNA thing is very shady. It's very weird. Again, not to say it over and over again, but you already said you had his DNA from the pizza box. What's up?
Yeah.
Hopefully within a week or two, we will be finishing this up unless they find something new Again, I mean, I feel horrible even saying this, but if they do, I'm still shooting for South Carolina, or I think Las Vegas, due to the order of Quetzalcoatl connections out there, order of the Freemasons. So yeah, one of those two. If something was to pop up, I'm saying that. But yeah, I think that's enough out of both of us for now. And again, not to beat a dead horse. It's just, what I said at the beginning. I know I might have gotten a little passionate about it, but for real, if you don't understand this stuff, just chill out and stop telling other people. That it's silly. So just keep that all in mind. And yeah, the DNA, very shady, very weird. I don't know what to think about it. And, who knows what could be coming up next with this. I was even wondering if this is going to be a segue into some other craziness with this case. Who knows what's coming now after a few days. Hopefully nothing crazy so I can finally get to the Book of Lies. But, yeah, that is it. And, yeah, until the next one, everybody be well. Later.